Welcome to the show, Artie Kornfeld, American musician, record producer, music executive, best known as music promoter behind the legendary Woodstock Festival of 1969. You also collaborated with Artie Kaplan in his career, and your contributions to the music industry, particularly in shaping Woodstock, have left a lasting impact on popular culture. In 1966, it was said that you'd written over 75 Billboard charting songs and contributed to more than 150 albums. There is a ton of stuff to talk about with you, Artie. Thank you so much for joining us, and please do tell us more.
Well, I spoke to BMI when I was writing a book that I never promoted. I didn't write it except to read it, and I never read it. It was a good book, Paul Simon told me. Everything I do is, I don't know where it comes from. It's a gift. I was a trumpet player. It's like when I was with Brian Wilson, we had a motorcycle accident in LA. He sat at the piano, he hit a chord, and out of nowhere, and I'm not a car racer. I'm a New York City kid, so I sang "I Was Cruising in My Sting," right, and then "Won't Come Back from Dead Man's Curve." Now I wrote Brian a note today, saying if you get a nice note back to me, I'll tell you what the song really means, because he didn't know. It's not even about a car race, but I made it about a car race. Okay. It's about the decisions we have to make in life. And if you go the wrong way, you won't come back from Dead Man's Curve.
Oh, yeah.
That's right.
Makes sense.
That's right. I was sober.
Oh. Tell us about your journey.
My journey was really quite spiritual, quite amazing. I mean, I was with Guruji in India. John Lennon took me over to the ashram, and I got my mantra when I got back from India. You know, I hung with my heroes. I managed Joe Frazier a little bit when he won the heavyweight championship, and Joe Namath when the Jets won the Super Bowl. They were friends.
Wow.
And I was a cop's kid. My dad always had 3 jobs because we were poor.
Yeah.
And they had a thing where I lived, and they said, for $1 a month, we'll give you an instrument and we'll give you a lesson for an hour. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to be a drummer, and I got there late, and all they had left was a trumpet. So I got the trumpet, and I worked on it, and then I got to be. We moved to North Carolina, and I got to be in Charlotte. You know, when you're in a section, you're like the 4th chair trumpet, the 3rd chair trumpet. And I worked my way up all the way to being the single solo. And I didn't know what I was doing. But, I had a good memory. So once I heard something, I could play it perfectly.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
You know what? I love the story you tell about Sonny and Cher.
Which one, the pie? The Changing Times, me and Steve, my writing partner, asked my Sonny to go on the I Got You Babe tour. The record by the Changing Times was a demo. I did it 5 years before. And Charlie Koppelman, who passed away, who discovered me, he had a copy in his case. And the president of Philips and the EMI came over to LA. And they were sitting and talking. And he said, Charlie, you got anything new to play me? And Charlie looked at his case. He didn't have a record. All he had was... He was still my manager, so all he had was a demo I gave him 5 years before, and it wasn't even. It was vinyl. It was a demo, and he played it for the guy, and then the guy had a table with a bunch of magazines, and the guy who I never even knew existed said, "This is wonderful. I want to put this out on Philips or EMI. I think it was EMI," and. That's what happened. Then he said, what's the name of the group? And Charlie looked down at the table with the magazines, and there was a magazine called Changing Times. He said, oh, they're the Changing Times. So now I'm in a restaurant with my late wife, because I lost a wife and child, and the soul rest in peace. And I know the other side, too. So, and the waiter comes over and said, are you Mr. Kornfeld? I said, yeah. He said, well, I have a phone call for you. I said, what? He said, yes, we have a phone call for you. And it's Charlie. I go, hey, Chaz. He said, he always said, don't call me Chaz. My folks name me Charles, and I want to be called Charles.
Yeah.
So anyway, Charlie was a trip. And he says, you're on the charts. And I knew that Steve and I already had 2 hits on the charts in the top 50.
Mm,
And I thought he was talking about those records.
right.
And he said, no, you're on the charts. I said, I'm on the charts. So what charts are you talking about, Charlie? You're on the charts with a hit, and you leave in 2 weeks on the I Got You Babe tour with Sonny and Cher. Now I'm eating lobster. I had no idea what he was talking about.
Mm.
And I went to Sebastian, and because we had the Lone Spoonful, and I said, John, could you give me a couple of your tie-dye shirts and take me to the village? Because I didn't live in the village. I was an uptown guy. And he said, could you give me a hat or something? And went to the village, and there we was at the bus getting on. And
Wow.
that's where I became friends with Ray Manzarek from the Doors, because the backup band for the whole tour was the Enemies, and that was Ray Manzarek's group. And that's why you see pictures of me and Ray when I spoke at the Summer of Love, because I love Ray Manzarek. With Jim Morris and everything, Ray never smoked cigarettes. He never drank. He never did anything. You know.
Wow.
And by the way, Morrison, it was a bum trip. He wasn't really guilty of anything. He didn't really expose himself. He just rubbed himself. Because when I was a great ball player in college. I pitched a perfect game against West Point Army.
Oh,
I was
wow.
a good pitcher,
Oh, cool.
and he had a habit before he sang of just rubbing his crotch. So that flashed me back because when I played Little League, I would do that. My father would be there and he'd go, Artie, leave it alone, it'll grow by itself. So that was my connection. And,
Tell
and
us,
on that tour also, this is where Three Dog Night was formed. The opening act on the tour was Danny Hutton singing Roses and Rainbows for You. And that's where he met Corey Wells. And that's how Three Dog Night got started
There you go.
on that tour. We did 28 cities in 2 days.
Wow. That's amazing.
No, not really, but it's really weird leaving New York on a school bus because they didn't have the big tour buses. I didn't get the big tour buses till I had Survivor when I had a Tiger or with Hall and Oates a tour. But otherwise, it was a school bus. And we sat there, we played cards on the amplifiers. And it's really fun to open up in Green Bay at minus 10 degrees and then get in a bus and drive 14 hours to Louisville, Kentucky to do the next show.
Yeah.
Wow.
It was really fun to find out what it was like. I played in symphony orchestras, but I never played in a rock band.
Mm.
And it was great because Corey's band was great. And that was a Sonny and Cher tour. Oh, the way the tour ended? So we did 28 cities, and then we all became friends. And the last city was Philly, and the Spectrum was there. And we were in there, and everybody did their act, and Sonny and Cher were closing. And for some reason, with my insanity, I say to Steve, try to get me a pie and put some whipped cream in it, and then get me one of those wheeling things and put a sheet over me. So now it's the end of the show after a month on the road, and she said, "I got you to hold my hand, I got you," and then when she goes, "I got you, babe," I jumped off this thing he was being wheeled on and smashed her in the face with a pie,
Oh
and
my
that's how the
God.
Sunny tour, "I Got You, Babe" tour ended. Yeah, I never claimed sanity.
Wow. Love it. Absolutely love it.
tell Tell us how hard it was to get clearance to do Woodstock.
Oh, it was my idea. Michael Lang was, I was in my office. I was vice president of Capitol. I ran rock. I ran New York. And I had hits. And I had good acts. I had Debbie Harry in The Wind in the Willows. And she even said in an interview that I developed a voice because I couldn't stand the voice. But she was very pretty. I was sitting here playing pool. Michael Lang was a kid from the street who came to got in to see me because he was from my neighborhood in Brooklyn. And we sat and he stayed with I invited him over because he had nowhere to stay. He was broke. He had to leave Miami because his head shop was busted and never did anything in music. And I really liked him. You know, he was spiritual, but he acted it out. But I love Michael. He was very spacey, but you know, and I trusted him, which I trusted everybody. You know, that's why I could say I've given away a couple of $100 million, and it didn't matter because I never did it for the money. I really never did ever. I did it for the trip, and I did it for what the show's about. Because there was a war going on. I did Woodstock because I was against the war in Vietnam.
Yeah.
I didn't do it to make money or have a hit movie. You know, I know if I could, I just knew if it happened. And I didn't have to get permission because it was my idea. And Michael and I talked, and then these guys advertised in the paper in New York, two guys on limited capital. And we went over to see them. And Michael didn't say much. They said it in their book, Barefoot in Babylon, the first book. And he talks about how the first meeting was that Artie did all the talking. And the other guy sat there looking like Roger Daltrey and being hip. And being hip in those days was just shutting up. As you could tell, hard for me. So didn't have to get it. We talked to them, and I talked them out of $250,000 to do a concert. And we formed a company, Woodstock Ventures, and I took over the promotion and the development, and Michael was going to be the builder. And if I was doing it now, I wouldn't have had Michael because I would have got my friend John Ellie, who did Starstock with the Rolling Stones in Toronto for $500,000. You know, I could have got a lot of people. I could have asked Bill Bryant. So Michael was going to do the site and try to get acts, and it was trouble because he was unknown and nobody thought it was going to happen. And I had such a small budget, you wouldn't believe it. When I told Bob Geldof, you know Bob Geldof, right?
Yeah.
So when I told Bob how much money I spent on promotion, he was shocked because I spent $60,000 promoting Woodstock, but I did something no one ever did. I used radio and I used the newspapers. And I brought in the money we needed by selling tickets through the newspapers.
Right.
And not that I was a genius, it was just desperation. No, it was really fun. It was really fun. You know what? Because I am one of those kids, and I still am. When I hear the Moody Blues singing Nights on White Satin, you know, was that the Moody Blues or was that Eric Burden?
Right.
Anyway, Eric was a friend of mine for a brief moment. Yeah, no. So it was, I knew how to promote because I already had about 60 records that made the top 100 in the charts. And I never got into promotion, and now I had to.
Yeah.
So I went to the radio guys that knew me as a Changing Time and knew me as a songwriter, and didn't offer him anything, just went to see him or talk to him and created an ad. And on my wedding anniversary to my late wife, May 31st, 3 months before Woodstock almost, I I said, you know what? I think we should put out an ad on May 31st and design the ad. And you know what? I didn't put the ad up to sell the tickets and get the money. I put the ad up because the site was way behind in being constructed.
Right.
And I knew that I had to find out where to spend the last money I had. So I figured if I put a ticket, kids had to fill it out with their address. I could figure out what neighborhoods and if they went to college or if they
Okay.
were poor kids. Yeah,
Mm.
so that's how that happened. It was done for the right reason.
Mm.
And what shocked me was I sold $1,300,000 in tickets over that weekend,
Wow.
Wow.
and that kept Woodstock alive
Mm.
because we were getting Michael was 600% over budget, and I was 6% over budget, you know, and
How, how much did the tickets cost?
oh, I don't know, 16, 18 wasn't critical at that point.
Yeah.
I would have To me it was free.
Mm.
Yeah.
I just wanted to show that our generation, the
Yeah.
World War II babies and the kids of those kids,
Yeah.
you know, and the boomers, I wanted to show that we were peaceful, that we
Mm.
were against our friends getting killed in Vietnam.
Yeah, of course.
And that was my main motivation, and to show that our generation was united in peace.
Hmm.
And it did stay
Well, you sure
united in
did.
peace until we announced it free. And then all the communes came in and, this and that. And it wasn't really that drug oriented. When you think
Mm.
almost 500,000 people, and it was one fist fight in 4 days almost.
Mm.
That was it.
That's amazing.
You've just started talking about Woodstock there. Woodstock, for me, my only chance to get into what Woodstock was about was to watch the Woodstock movie, which I've done a couple of times now.
I put the movie together four
Yeah,
days before my partners, I was on the road. My
gonna say, yeah.
partners, without me knowing, went and tried 50 times and got turned down. And I know how to sell something I believe in.
Mm.
And Freddie Weintraub, who introduced Dylan at the bitter end in New
Yeah.
York, he had quit and become, when I was running Mercury, there was an actor in England, a friend of Pete Seeger's called Leon Bibb. Then I put 200 grand and I took, as a favor to Freddie,
Mhm.
he managed them, and I took him into the studio and recorded them. So I called him 4 days before, it was before the concert,
Mm.
and he says, Artie, you're not going to mug me with that stupid ass thing. The field's not going to be ready. The partner doesn't know what he's doing. And then I said, Freddie, wait a minute, Freddie. Do you remember that you owe me 200 grand? And I said, aside from that, this is a great thing for Leon Bibb because no one knows who he is. And actually, it wasn't that great because still no one knows who he is. But he's a great singer.
Mm.
And I was the first person to cut Suzanne. He didn't even know, the writer didn't even know it was out. I met him in a restaurant in Puerto Rico and I told him. He said, you're a writer and you get records. I don't have one out. I said, yes, you do. He said, what? I said, well, I recorded Suzanne with a symphony orchestra, and I did.
Yeah.
I did. And he said, it's out? I said, yeah. You know,
Mm.
yeah, he was a genius, Leonard Cohen. So anyway, the movie now takes place at the Pan Am building with a helicopter pad on top.
Mm.
And Michael Wadley's on the site, and Lang didn't save any money for film. He has Scorsese there, who was a student in his class.
Yeah.
And we had to get film. And so I sat with Ted Ashley, who happened to be the agent for the cow songs that I wrote. I love the flower girl, the song I wrote.
Mm-hmm.
And I sat in the Pan Am building for 35 hours. I felt like I was in a circus selling peanuts or something. And they didn't want to know about it. And then when it got after 35 hours, I thought to myself, the chairman of the board, Ted Ashley, was a friend of mine.
Mm-hmm.
They were friends of mine, the Warner's people. And he said, Artie, let me tell you, while movies are doing nothing, documentaries are hardly doing anything now.
Mm.
And Warner's is shaky. We could go bankrupt. And then I thought for 1 second, after 35 hours, and I think I was sober, and I said,
Yeah.
well, what about the Titanic? I don't know where that came from. What about the Titanic?
Mm.
That was a documentary that made zillions of dollars.
Mm-hmm.
And then they started laughing like crazy. And they gave me a pad and a pen and called the secretary down, and I wrote out the contract. It was the craziest movie deal because I was splitting it 50-50 with Warner Brothers. Nobody gets that deal.
Wow.
And that's what the deal that's what the deal was. Now I don't know what happened after Michael and I left. Because who knows? Joel and John were necessary and they did their part. But
Okay.
John Roberts was from Johnson and Johnson, that pharmaceutical company, and Joel, they were Yale boys. And they said, Artie, you promoted this concert so well, we won't have to spend a penny on promoting it. All
Yeah.
we got to do is put signs on theaters and they're going to sell out. And that's what happened.
Yeah.
And Michael and I had seen 12 producers, and we liked Michael Wadley's. We liked the fact that he used split screen. No one had ever used split screen
Yeah.
before. That was the first time.
That's amazing. Yeah.
And Wadley and I are friends, and Michael and I were actually pushed out. But I did it for a reason. You know what? If we would have stayed and fought against Joel and John and Warner's,
Mm-hmm.
it would have taken away in the papers because it was pressed all over the world. It would have taken away the beauty of what this show's about.
Yeah.
About peace and spirit and standing together against the world.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I said to Michael, let's sell out and get out of here. And it cost me about $60 million when I made that decision. But what's $60 million? I can't even relate to what it is.
Fair enough.
$10.40 if you need it is a lot.
Yeah. Well,
and I've been rich and I've been a millionaire and I've been broke, like everybody else.
Of course.
And so that's how the movie happened.
Tell me about Richie Haven.
Did you see the director's cut too? It opens up with me and Richie on stage.
Absolutely right.
Because Michael came to me crying, Artie, none of my guys, and it's supposed to be so heavy, could get Richie to play. And I said, Richie's a friend of mine. I helped Richie when he came to New York. I got him a lawyer. I helped get him gigs.
Fantastic.
And I got Richie. That's me with the mic handing it to Richie. And as I walked away, when I got 10 feet, I heard freedom, freedom.
Right. Yeah.
That's classic, right? And I love Richie Havens. What a beautiful guy. I'm in my lawyer's office. He's the best lawyer around. And there's a kid sitting there, a black fella, and he's staring. And I felt bad because he was sitting there for an hour and he didn't get to see anybody. So I walked over, we started to talk. And that's how I met Richie. And I got him in to see the lawyer, and he got a lawyer. And we became friends.
Mm-hmm.
And this is about a year and a half before Woodstock. And I love Richie.
Yeah.
I love Richie. And his first record was called, people don't even know it because it was on a small label, and it was called Follow.
Mm-hmm.
And I wound up publishing it, but I gave it back to the writer.
Okay.
When I let people go, I gave them back their publisher. I don't know why.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't keep it. You know what? I didn't, because it went against, I wasn't really doing it for money. I was glad we could live well, and I did have a limousine, and I lived in a penthouse. But you know what? I was happy living with my folks too. It was about the music and connecting with people. And
absolutely.
pulling us together like the young ones. Smile on your brother. Everybody get together. Try to love one another right now.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure. One thing I would say about Woodstock and about the well, certainly I saw that on the director's cut is the way Richie played the guitar. It felt like so passionately that it almost he was going to take away the paintwork on the actual guitar because just
Yeah, well, put
such
yourself with
energy,
me.
incredible.
I'm walking with a friend. I walk him up this thing. I'm holding the microphone in my left. He has his arm around me, and we're friends. And then I give him the mic, and I start to walk away, and I get 10 feet, and I hear freedom. And God Almighty, that got me higher than Richie Havens singing, "I Want to Take You Higher."
Yeah, that was amazing, incredible.
Come on, Get Together. That was Dino Valente.
Yeah, that wasn't in the original cut, but while they did the director's cut, he put that in.
Mm,
And if you notice, there wasn't a lot of accent in the director's cut,
yeah,
Right.
and it was weird because that's how it started. And then there's a shot of me standing behind Richie when he's playing the Star Spangled Banner,
yeah,
and I was on stage with Richie when it ended, and it wasn't planned that way.
yeah, amazing.
Wow.
It opened with the music from Can't Eat.
Mm.
Going to the country, you're going to take it there.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's right.
And Frida de la Parra is about 2,000 years old. He started Can't Heat, and he's still playing the drums when they go on tour.
Wow, amazing.
The lead died, and then someone else took over,
Yeah,
and it was just perfect for that movie. You know, I wasn't involved in that. I was busy
yeah.
praying no one got killed.
I
Oh,
love Joe Cocker.
Joe Cocker was amazing on
Joe
that. Yeah.
Cocker.
Mm,
Okay, Michael Lang turned down Joe Cocker. He saw him on Ed Sullivan.
okay.
Michael had never done anything in music. He was one of the discoverers of the Kinks, and he had Leon Russell,
Hmm.
and he had Mad Dogs. I even played with Mad Dogs and Englishmen in London, and I sat next to Leon Russell at the Albert Hall when he was doing my song for you. And the sound was incredible, by the way. So, it was the one, I'll tell you one, because I'm not thrilled with Yoko, because John was a friend of mine, and so was Paul.
Hmm.
Uh, I was there the week in the studio with John when Yoko fell in love with my other friend David Spinoza, and she had never talked about it. And I was interviewing her, and all I know is freaked out. She said, "Artie, how did you get me to say those things?" And I said, "What things?" She said, "The things you told about the real story of the breakup." And I said, "I told the truth. What do you want me to do? I told what I knew.
Mm,
Yes.
It was my job to share it with people."
yeah.
And I was glad it came out that way because it was the truth.
What was that song? Whoopee, we all gonna die about
Oh,
Vietnam.
well, it's 1, 2, 3. What are
Yeah.
we fighting for? Don't
Yeah.
ask me, I don't give a damn.
That's the
Next
one.
stop is Vietnam.
Mm,
That's
Yeah,
right.
Joe's.
I love that
I,
song.
I interviewed Joe twice, and I spoke at the Summer of Love. I was the main speaker for 100,000 people.
mm,
And then I spoke at the Woodstock 50th, and it was 78,000 people. And both times I had Joe as a friend standing next to me on stage in case I passed out. I didn't know if I was going to get shot by 100,000 people, but I was
amazing.
pretty
Yeah.
politically liberal.
That's
I said,
amazing.
"Oh God, Joe, if I fall, catch me." And Joe, yeah, Joe and I are friends. I don't know why we split up, but because we had life to live,
Yeah,
Hmm.
I guess that
and it
happens.
couldn't
Yeah.
just mine. Too much of my last 55 years were taken up by Woodstock,
Mm,
you
Yeah.
know. But the joy that came out of it was wonderful.
yeah.
Yeah.
But the petty stuff with people working, trying to get more credit and this and that. I had a staff of 5, and I got almost 500,000 people. And I spoke to Governor Rockefeller, and he said, "Artie, we may have to close the thruway." I said,
Mm.
why? He said, because there's another 150,000 on the way. And we estimate if we keep it open, you're going to have 2 more million people on the road. And
Oh, wow.
you're going to have a riot.
Yeah.
And I said, let's close the throughway. And we did. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's incredible.
Wow.
And we already had 450,000 people there anyway.
Yeah.
That's a big concert. Tom?
Well, I mean,
When I say we, you're included too, because it was your spirit also. You had the same spirit I have, so you felt the same way.
this is
I
what
think.
this is actually takes me on to my next point. I was going to say that you kind of, that's part of what you like to portray, is the fact that everybody even now has potential for the Woodstock spirit within them. I think I saw a quote that you'd said
Well,
relating to that.
Michael only did 3 or 4 interviews because he didn't know the whole story.
Mm.
And Joel and John never did interviews. So I was the partner, and I was the president of my class in college. I know how to speak.
Mm.
And I wanted to get the feeling
Yeah.
that I had that night in my house when we came up with the idea to do Woodstock.
Yeah.
And it was pure.
Mm.
It was pure, and it wasn't for money. And
No.
I never wrote songs for money either. To pay the rent, that's all. If I could
Yeah.
pay the rent, I was happy.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Absolutely phenomenal.
Wow. Well,
And you know what? Doing the I Got You Babe tour, I actually got to get up on stage, for 3 or 4 thousand people every night.
Yeah.
yeah.
And that was really a trip because I'd never done that. I played in a symphony in the back,
Mm.
but what a trip that was.
Yeah.
What was the most fun you had over these years?
Uh, the most fun is every time you're in the studio and the rhythm section flips. And I discovered Steve Gadd's, the famous drummer. The first time
Oh,
he
yeah.
ever played on a record was the Artie Kornfeld trio on Dunhill. He had never gotten paid to play. And
Okay.
Tony Levin, King Crimson, the first time he played bass on a record was on my record. And now the record's popular because Badfinger is trying to do a re thing. And they wanted me to come in and sing 4 songs for my album. And I just said at 83, I don't quite have the same spirit.
So, so as you know, Artie, we're doing music for global change, for social conscious lyrical content, but positive social conscious lyrical content. And we hope you can join us and endorse what we're doing.
Yeah, you know what? My first really huge record was the Pied Piper. And it was first by me, and it was #1 in England for a long time.
Mm.
Do you know what John Lennon told me?
What?
He told me in the interview, it was recorded. He said the first record he bought was he was watching Top of the Pops, and Crispy and St. Peter came out singing the Pied Piper, and he ran to the store and got the last one in the store. And I said, I
Wow.
must be in heaven. Because he said to me, you're Artie Kornfeld, you're the songwriter. And I said, I can't believe John Lennon, who did Imagine, is telling me that I'm the songwriter. It blew my mind.
Amazing.
And
Yeah. God, I
becoming
love it.
friends with John and sitting in the studio for a month and talking for 2 hours. Never about the Beatles,
Mm.
never about Woodstock, never about the music business, but about space and chakra, because they got me into meditation when they came back from India.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a good thing to do. Then I got into Buddhism. Then I
Yeah.
was born Jewish, but
Uh-huh.
I don't know what that means exactly. I was born, and because of the date of my birthday, I had the same reading as Jesus Christ had. I was born a rabbi.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's what the story. I was born on the stroke of the new year in the Jewish religion.
Right.
Wow.
I don't know what it means because it means a lot because I've had a very full life, but a lot of laughter, a lot of sorrow, but you put it all together and it spells happiness tomorrow. I just made that up. Pretty good, huh?
That's good.
Good
lyric for a
lyric. Write
song.
that down.
Absolutely, get that written down.
There was sadness yesterday and there's happiness tomorrow. It'll make you forget all your sorrow.
There you go.
Are you still dabbling in the music business?
Oh yeah, I just had my guitar out.
Yeah.
No, I had a cell. I had a Gibson Dove, and I got it with Johnny Cash. I had, and Johnny was a friend, and we got our Gibson Doves. And you can't get a Gibson Dove because they ran a real one because they ran out of the wood. So the ones they make now are with a different wood. And if you're a guitar player, it's like the Lamborghini or whatever of the guitar.
Yeah.
And it's and the guy wanted it, and I sold it. I traded it because I needed a new air conditioning unit. He had an air conditioning company, and he loved the guitar. And it was $12,000. So I told him we didn't have 12 grand that week.
Yeah.
And so the girl who owned the company had seen the guitar, and she came in and said, "How about this?" And I signed it, and I sold it for 12,000, what the guitar was worth, and now they're selling for 35, 40,000.
Oh, wow.
But it wasn't money to me. It was It was a guitar I learned to write on.
Wow.
Yeah. Mama Cass got me into playing guitar.
Okay.
Went to college.
You said there was a couple of movies, Woodstock. Right?
Well, there was Woodstock. Then the best one was Director's Cut. No, then there was the Director's Cut 1. That wasn't great. Didn't go anywhere. And then they did Director's Cut 2 to coincide with the 50th anniversary. And that was huge.
Yeah.
I mean, it sold like 300,000 copies within a week, and I wasn't counting because I wasn't getting paid.
Yeah. It was not really like a 4 hour, it was like 3 hours and something long film. But I mean, I watched them a couple of times and I didn't feel like I'd been watching a film for 3 hours. It was so engaging and so sort of, I was keen to see all of the background material, all the kind of the ethos behind it and all the acts and everything. Even though it's a huge film and a really long film, it really didn't feel long to sit and watch it. It was a pleasure to watch.
Not at all. And whenever I'm interviewed, I always stress, here I am and I'm sober. Because I couldn't have said that 10 years before.
Yeah.
And
Right.
I said that because, in my book, which is never advertised, which I've gotten things in Rolling Stone from Neil Young, Paul Simon, Richie, people like that made comments, and I never publicized the book. And you know what? I never read it. I wrote it, and I never read it.
Right.
Wow.
It went over sad parts of my past too.
Yeah.
But I put it in there because I was really into trying to stop people from getting into cocaine. Yeah, I did, because, I was a ball player. I'll tell you a quick story, side story. John Sebastian will hate me, but we signed the Levin Sportful and we're in the office. And it's before we put out Magic. And all we had is a demo. Do you believe in Magic? Oh, so the manager says to us, "Why don't you come to the Night Owl? The Spoonful's playing." So we went and with our wives, the three of us and our wives, and in the club, the Cafe Wa, all that was sitting there was Phil Spector and Bob Dylan.
Right.
So we sit down, and the wives are there, and they're there, and I'm sitting next to Dylan. Now, it's the one person in the world I never could keep my cool with. I never talked. I didn't say much because something about Dylan just mesmerized me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was just so brilliant. And didn't say anything, just sitting there.
Wow.
And I've talked to him, and I don't know quite what he said, but it was heavy.
Oh, fantastic.
Listen to the Pied Piper, and you're going to hear It's not a happy-go-lucky song. It's a revolutionary song.
Mm.
And I'm talking to our generation about the war, and I say, girl, don't be scared to move. It ain't, what are you trying to prove? It ain't true. Your life has kicked you. It's your mind, and that's all that's tricking you. And that whole lyric of that song, even though I stole it from Aesop's Fable, uh, the whole lyric about the song was an angry song by a generation.
Mm.
And then I Love the Flower Girl, The Rain, the Park, and other things. That's still going all around the world.
Yeah.
That just got a Legend Award from BMI.
Amazing.
BMI Legend Award of the Pied Piper. You have to have 2 million plays to get a Legend Award. The greatest thrill, if you're a producer,
Mm.
is when you get the rhythm section right. And
Yeah.
when I mixed The Rain, the Park, and if you listen to that mix with all those harmonies, I did it in one take.
Did
And
you?
I'll tell you
Wow.
the big secret on the castles, The Rain, the Park, and other things. That's not Rain. I finished the whole thing, and I did it like that. One mix I did one mix with 90 instruments, and
That's amazing.
I had to come up with Rain, so I called SIR, and they delivered stuff to studios, and
Yeah.
they sent 100 little things with Rain, and none of them were right. So they're taking it back, and as they're leaving, and I'm already ready to commit suicide, and I look at a box and it says bacon frying in a pan. So this is where the Beatles helped. I thought of George Martin and the stuff he did. And I
Yeah.
remembered seeing what he did. And I said, if I take the tape of bacon in a pan and I stretch it over the vocal stand over there, and I put another harmonizer on the echo, and I never heard it, and we put it on, and that was The Rain.
Sounds like Rain.
So now
Yeah.
the councils have been made. The councils are still going on. A family.
Yeah.
Everybody said, "What are
Yeah.
you doing with these kids?" I said, "The whole world was founded on families,
That's it.
That's
and
right.
their family and their vocal cords they match. The harmonies are great."
We're
Amazing.
going to get all your information so we can pass it on, but Tom's going to get that for you. And
Yeah.
then we're going to schedule for you to come back because there's so many amazing stories that you have. So Tom's going to get your information if you where people can find you. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? You guys make you feel like you're talking to friends.
Well,
It's not hard to
that's what
do.
we aim
You know,
at.
I'm,
That's our
I,
aim.
enjoy, I don't see a lot of people because everybody comes here doesn't want they want to talk with. Nobody comes here,
Yeah.
but you're here.
No,
Yeah. We're here.
it's a
So,
I'm
pleasure to
Tom,
have
special.
Tom,
you.
get it.
I'm a jerk like everybody. Not that I'm special, but they're crazy about Woodstock,
Oh, you
and
are
I'm
special, Artie.
and I'm
That
just
is.
hung up by it.
Yeah, you are.
And
Well, what
what
I
we'll do?
just
We'll
want to
talk
know. Oh, go on.
yeah. Maureen, we'll talk to Maureen because are you on socials? You on the
Yes,
socials?
yes. I have a fans of Artie Kornfeld page, and I have my own page, and Artie has pages on socials too. And I'll send you links after this, like once I get
Okay.
out of here.
Okay,
What we'll do.
that's great.
What we'll
Is
do.
that okay?
That's fine. What I will do is I'll get all the social links that you've got. We'll put the links of those in the description of the video here, so that anyone's interested, they can go off and take a look at what Artie's about.
We love you, brother. Thank you for coming on our show.
Yeah, it's a real pleasure.
Music can save the world if we all get together. Music can save the world. Yeah. Music can save the world. If we all come together, music can save the world. There's an urgency facing our humanity.
Thank you so much for watching. To stay up to date, please click subscribe and hit the bell. You can also join our group on Facebook and find us on LinkedIn and Instagram.